Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, once again joined by Zepsi. We both do some contract work for the HBAR Foundation, but we don't do these weekly updates in any official capacity. We're just coming to you personally to give you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. Welcome, Zep.
How's it going, Brandon?
It's going really good. We have a lot to cover this week, but as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So the first thing I wanted to get into is the governing council meeting. Of course, it was hosted at the Googleplex by Google. It was a 3-day event. It seemed like there was a lot going on, and I wanted to get some deeper insights. So I got a hold of Christian Hasker. He is the CMO at Swirls Labs. He had some really good thoughts around everything that happened at the meeting, so listen in. Christian, besides being in person, the Hedera Governing Council meeting hosted by Google seemed like it was more in depth than the average Governing Council meeting. Can you give us an overview on how that meeting went?
Yes, absolutely. So first off, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. And hello, HBARbarians. Good to be back in touch. It's definitely been a busy time. And these in-person governing council meetings, you can't really compare them to the virtual ones. So since the pandemic, we've now had two. The first one was in Dubai back in October. And then, as you referenced, we just had one hosted by Google at the Googleplex in Mountain View, which is their global headquarters. And it's 3 days. It's 3 days long. A virtual meeting is 90 to 120 minutes only. So those virtual meetings tend to be procedural, right? There's a lot of things that they have to review and approve, whereas these in-person meetings obviously gives you a lot more scope to go really deep into topics, to really gain an understanding, for them to really discuss pros and cons of different approaches and hopefully forge consensus from those as well. Obviously, a lot of time for networking as well. And for me personally, that's kind of where the magic happens, because now we have 29 members. You're actually sat in a very large room of maybe 70, 75 people in that room. And the ability to really have everyone speak and interact is somewhat limited, even in this longer setting. So the break times, whether it's lunch or a coffee break or breakfast in the morning or something in the evening, really enables people to talk one-on-one or in small groups and really go deep. And that's what I love about it. You really just get to know people on a human level, and that's so beneficial.
I had the same experience down there at Consensus, and Lehman was talking about the same thing on that clip that you put out. But I do want to get to Google specifically. Between the Google Cloud Web3 program and this meeting, it seems like Google is getting much more active in the space. What's your perspective on the largest governing council member?
They probably are our largest, aren't they? Yes. So you're right. They see Web3 as a real growth area for their business, especially around Google Cloud. Why Google Cloud specifically is Google Cloud is an infrastructure play, right? It's these services that you can consume, you can spin up nodes, you can do all these things. They can offer a lot of the external infrastructure that you require for blockchain technology as well. So they were, Hedera was the first technology that they looked at and got into in this space. And since then, it's been spun out into its own dedicated focus area of the business as well. And so, they're just one of these great thought leaders in the space. When you talk with them, they're incredibly knowledgeable about the entire Web3 ecosystem. And that brings a lot of value back to the governing council members, because other members, they're not immersed in this day in, day out. They have a high interest for their business, but it's not that they're living and breathing Web3 day in, day out. Whereas the folks from Google, it's like you, right? You're in this space, you're consuming everything. And a lot of good will come from that.
So cloud and Web3 infrastructure is certainly one of these, but what are some of the other verticals or even specific use cases that the council is focused on that you find most interesting or exciting?
the common denominator, like the vertical that every council member is like, yes, that is important today, but over the next 5-10 years is going to become of increasing importance, is sustainability. 100%. And Hedera has great solutions to improve the trust and transparency of the data related to sustainability. You can then tokenize emissions. So if you are a governing council member and you're trying to account, which they all are, by the way, trying to account for your own carbon footprint, even before you have a goal of how to reduce it, just get a handle on, how much are we emitting? You can track and trace and then do these carbon emissions tokens. And then on the supply side, you have carbon offset tokens. And the HBAR Foundation Sustainability Initiative Fund is really focused on this two-sided marketplace and bringing these groups together. So we're very fortunate. We have governing council members that over time can really generate the demand for carbon offsets. And then we have increasingly companies coming that provide these carbon offsets and can mint and exchange those on Hedera. So I'm incredibly bullish on sustainability as a key focus area for Hedera. I think we've got the early mover advantage there today, and it's our space to lose. And so I'm very excited about that. And then a couple of other areas, we have banks and financial institutions. So we've got Standard Bank, Shinhan Bank, Nomura, FIS, WorldPay, EFTPOS, which is becoming Australia Payments Plus, Aberdeen, this huge investment company. This traditional finance adopting blockchain technologies for decentralized offerings, whether that's a stablecoin for real-time settlement, whether that's a proof of reserve from FIS that's around stablecoins. By the way, anything I'm saying right now has already been disclosed publicly, so we're on good ground here. Or the things that DLA Piper are doing around real-world asset tokenization. And then Aberdeen is tokenizing their investment fund. We're calling it on-chain finance, which may denote for people that it's just DeFi, but that isn't what we mean. It's really bringing, yes, there's that component to it that's born and raised in Web3, but we're really talking about how traditional players can really take advantage of this technology. So very excited about that. And then just before we were getting on here, the other thing that folks are really excited about, and I think this is going to drive short term, something like sustainability is longer term, but short term, you have consumer engagement and loyalty. And I know you personally, this is a passion of yours, right? With Jesse, with Twigital. And I think the term NFTs was starting to, yes, it still has its place, but it's really sort of a thing, whereas consumer engagement and loyalty is the business driver. How can you get your customers to engage more while giving you less data, right? Because that business model is kind of dying. So what is this fair exchange? What can you give your consumers where they're going to engage more with you? And these digital collectibles are a great way. So we saw, a massive brand like Mars Wrigley come onto Hedera via the Mall and Bamboo Meta. We're going to see a lot more of that. If you think about LG's play in collectibles via their televisions with LG Art Lab, that's really a consumer engagement and loyalty play as well. And I would say there's a handful of council members that are really starting to think about, okay, how can we adopt this technology to engage better with our consumers and get them to buy more of their goods?
Christian, I think you hit on a lot of the things that I'm excited about. So, of course, refi, shout out to Wes with the Sustainable Impact Fund. He's doing a fantastic job building out all that infrastructure and making all those proper connections. Certainly, traditional finance, like you said, DeFi is more of a proof of concept. The Web3 aspect of it is more just a proof of concept at this point. But when that moves into the traditional financial space, that's when things are going to get really interesting. And we've already heard, Larry Fink say that the future of financial markets is going to be tokenization, but not just tokenization, but tokenization on public networks like Hedera. And we have Aberdeen already talking along those lines as well. And the consumer engagement, just experienced it this last week with Karate Combat and how they are engaging with their fans. And one of the most exciting events that I've ever been to. All right, so finally, and I'm not sure which side of the fence I land on for this, but I'm leaning pretty hard in one direction. But in your opinion, will it be the enterprise use cases that will have the most impact on the Hedera network, or those stemming from startups? Now, granted, some of those startups will end up being enterprises themselves, but essentially, will it be those established enterprises like Avery Dennison with Atmaio, or businesses built on new ideas like Neuron that are going to have the most impact?
Yes, I mean, crystal ball time, right? So startups are essential because they move fast. They're incredibly innovative. They're not shackled with a lot of the just bureaucracy that large enterprises are. So they can really, push the envelope. And what tends to happen is with successful startups, they either grow large and become enterprises, like you just referenced, or they get acquired by large enterprises. We've had our first acquisition from a very large enterprise of a ecosystem application. It's OneSpan. It's if you know DocuSign, OneSpan is a very large security company. They have similar digital e-signing offerings. They do YubiKeys for laptops and very authentication stuff. They acquired ProvenDB. Why? Because they see a competitive differentiator to actually verify your e-signatures and hash those on chain so that you have this very secure store. You can prove, yeah, Brandon, you did sign that at this time, and we can query the public ledger for that. So that's a good example of a very small startup being acquired by a much larger enterprise for a very strategic competitive, different, unique value proposition. So we're going to see a lot of that. And then along come the enterprises. They move slowly, right? They move very slowly. So, a typical sort of cycle for them is they'll engage with the corporate utilization committee around an idea for a proof of concept. They discuss that among themselves. Maybe another council member is doing something similar or could take advantage of this offering, this proof of concept. And then you build the proof of concept. It either does well or it doesn't do well. If you can build internal business support for it, then maybe you get the budget to then productize that and bring it to market. Then you have to add it to your sales book. You've got to train your sales teams. You've got to do marketing campaigns. So these are the things where I feel the impatience, right? I want all of these applications to come to mainnet. So I totally get it when you're sitting in the community and you're like, oh, we heard about that thing ages ago. Where is it? Why hasn't it come? That's a little bit about it. But will they come? For sure. No question in my mind that as a public ledger, because of our governing council, because we were architected from the ground up for enterprise scale, that's a really, really good opportunity for us. And I am excited, but we have to be patient, right? If these things take 3-5 years, that's not a long time in enterprise land. So I think startups essential, and then along come the enterprises behind.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the way I looked at this, I look at another revolutionary technology with the internet. And, there were certainly big enterprises that have leveraged that to go from very large to huge in the case of, Apple, a behemoth, or Microsoft or something along those lines. But really the most impressive, and this is why I lean more towards the startups, more impressive have been the Googles and the eBays and Facebook and so on. These things that just came into fruition because of the power of Web 2, of the internet. But we're going to see the same thing, I believe, in this space. I mean, you look at Neuron taking and putting a settlement layer on top of IoT could be mind-blowing. Like the potential with that, with smart cities and everything else, could be really impressive. So either way, I just want to see the network become successful because I think it has so much potential. But it's going to be.
And then you talk about IoT. I mean, the big buzzword right now is AI. AI and public blockchains will converge at some point because AI has a data problem. Do you trust AI? Do you trust the data? Do you trust the outputs? So when we're talking about trust, then we think about public ledgers, right? Like Hedera. And then you think about how has OpenAI gone to market with monetization strategy. They're pulling, a Web 2 strategy in. Imagine you could pay per call to ChatGPT or, what there are an explosion of them now. So whatever your flavor is, and, you load up a wallet, put, $3 in it, and you're good to go, right? And you're querying and you're getting your output. They're making money. You're happy. You're not giving over your data. I mean, the first thing I did when I signed up for ChatGPT was my email address and phone number, right? I mean, come on, we can do better.
Sure. The one thing with AI and DLT is it's going to touch every single industry, whether it's AI, whether it's DLT, and there's going to be so many synergies there. Christian, before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to pass on about the meeting or anything else?
I'd like to just talk very briefly about the marketing committee because it was we called it the inaugural one, but we did have this old marketing committee that we deprecated. We have two co-chairs that I am so excited to work with. Shuchi Rana from ServiceNow, and we're already collaborating. We're doing an event with her this coming week for SF Tech Week. She's going to host us at ServiceNow. So she's going to speak on a panel there. So that's fantastic. And then Ian Jebbett from DLA Piper, Toco. He's based in the UK, so he didn't come in person this time. He dialed in for marketing committee. And they're already so excited and working well with the team. I'm very hopeful that this leads to just greater both engagement within council members, but then also engagement of council members in our broader community. And, magic happens when we can function as one cohesive community. So I'm very excited about that. May take a little time, but, the early signs are very positive.
Well, Christian, all of this is exciting, and it's always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for swinging by today and giving us some time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
We are at the Googleplex. This is a Hedera council meeting. Since COVID, this is only the second one we've had. It is so good. All the council members are coming together in one place. We're meeting in one place. Honestly, with face-to-face meetings, you get things you don't get out of Zoom. I think we accomplish more in the coffee breaks than we do with a year of Zooms. So I'm very excited to be here right now.
So yeah, anybody who thought that some of the council members weren't really engaged, there may be some, but Google is not one of them. And they put on a fantastic event. Like I mentioned, it looks like they're getting much more involved in the Web3 space, which of course is going to be great for Hedera, which clearly they have a lot of focus on. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just reiterating that sentiment, it's fantastic to see Google stepping up as our biggest council member. And, the fact that they hosted, fantastic. The fact they got the startup, fantastic. And I saw a brief tweet from BCW at some point this week. So maybe there's more going on there. Who knows? But very excited nonetheless that they're stepping up there. But even, beyond that, I think, Christian briefly touched on AI and sort of this intersection of AI and DLT. And I think for me, having seen Mr. Shah join the Hashgraph Association a few weeks ago, he joined as the head of global sales at IBM. He's now, I think, the director of business development there. And his opening statement was that he believes that two of the biggest technologies of the next decade or beyond is going to be Web3, DLT, and AI. And in particular, that how DLT can augment AI and bring something more to it, bring value to it. And I think, to me, all of these companies in our council, they're going to be using AI somehow. Google, obviously, all in there. You've got other partners outside of the ecosystem that are going all in there. And this technology is obviously so vast and it's now so pervasive everywhere. But it comes with that element of distrust. There's one of the biggest arguments you see against AI is this idea that it'll plunge us even more into a sort of world of post-truth, or a world where we can't tell what's real, we can't tell what's fake, deep fakes, fake news, and so on. And what has always attracted me to distributed ledger technology is this vision of increasing truth, this trust layer of the internet that Hedera always promised to be. And I think hearing Christian talk about AI there, knowing that Mr. Shah's at the Hashgraph Association, knowing that the council are going to be all in on AI in some instance, I think knowing that DLT is there and they're all on Hedera and Hedera can benefit and bring transparency to that industry, I think, to me, is one of the most compelling visions for DLT at the moment. So just excited to hear Christian say something there. I wonder, if there's conversations going there or what, but just very excited to hear that topic in particular.
Yeah, and just good to see the engagement of the council. I think they're going to work together and come up with some really impressive things. Going along the lines of DLT and AI, there are several different verticals that are these exponential new technologies, whether it's robotics, whether it's self-driving cars and DLT and AI and biotech. They're all kind of hitting their stride at the same time. It's still early on with all those things, but they're all going to work off each other, that we hope is going to make things that much more prosperous. That's my belief, that these new technologies are going to make us much more efficient and prosperous in the long run. All right, the next big story that we wanted to cover, it comes out of Singapore, StraitsX. Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, so XSGD, which is the Singapore-backed stablecoin from StraitsX, is one of the biggest non-USD stablecoins. They launched in 2020, October, late 2020, and they've surpassed over 7 billion XSGD in volume, in on-chain transactions. And so that means, of course, that they've been built on, it's been on other ledgers before Hedera, but the fact that they are expanding to Hedera obviously indicates that they've got a long-term vision for the more institutional side, but also that perhaps some of the technology they were using before hasn't quite met the mark. We know that as these technologies scale, as stablecoins scale, as more people adopt them, things like fixed fees become very important. Things like a carbon negative footprint become very important. They launched in 2020 when perhaps Hedera wasn't quite at the forefront, but we are now seeing Hedera really, really sort of make strides. And I think they're obviously seeing that as well. They're probably hedging their bets on the institutional side, but also, a lot of the underlying value of the hash graph itself. So excited to see what is, I think, our first non-USD stablecoin on this scale, at least, that I know of. And we know that there are going to be centralized exchange listings down the line. So yeah, this is, I think, a great addition to our ecosystem, and a big shout out to Sabrina from the FinTech and Payments Fund for spearheading that.
Yeah, I actually have a quote from Sabrina, but we'll start out with Kenny Chan. He is the head of StraitsX. He said, "We're excited to have XSGD on Hedera Network natively, contributing to a flourishing ecosystem of applications that offer real-time XSGD stablecoin payments. With Hedera's energy-efficient framework, micropayments and stablecoins will become increasingly viable, leading to greater financial inclusion in the region." And then Sabrina went on to say, "We're excited to be joining with StraitsX to bring a Hedera native XSGD to the market and add a new regulated and fully reserved stablecoin to our ecosystem. We believe XSGD will add value to Hedera-based applications in the APAC region and beyond, including in the financial inclusion space, as evidenced by our earlier proof of concept with StraitsX." So yes, these foundational pieces are going to be really important. We may not see all of those applications that are going to be enabled right now, but they're going to be coming in the future, and it is a region that's going to be really important. All right, and the next thing we wanted to cover is from Red Swan. I know we already covered them last week. We had their CEO, Ed Nwakati, on, who gave us some really good insights, but they actually had their press release come out this week. Do you have any thoughts on that, Zep?
Like you said, we said last week, this breadcrumb trail has been there for a while with Red Swan. But this week, we know we've had that formal announcement, of course, building on the announcement last week in the interview. But I think, reiterating on last week, I think this is exciting for various reasons. I think, of course, BCG, Boston Consulting Group, they predicted about a year and a half ago that $16 trillion in assets could be tokenized by 2030, and the largest proportion of that being in real estate. We've also had bets from the likes of JP Morgan, Citibank, Goldman Sachs, the big dogs in the world. They're all betting on this technology, and they're betting on the real estate side of it. And Red Swan are one of the pioneers in this industry. They've been there from, I think we sort of started the bread train, 3 or 4 years ago, maybe even a bit further than that. But they saw this value proposition very early, before these big consulting groups made it public, before these big investment groups went public with their visions. And we know that part of Red Swan's strategy is multi-chain. Again, I think they had something on Polygon before and maybe Ethereum, but this token studio that they're now in the creation of, that I think is coming in sort of midsummer, this is in itself built entirely on Hedera. They made clear that there's various reasons for that. At the native layer of the Hedera token service, which is where the main force of this will be coming from, is the optional Know Your Customer, KYC, and AML. And, this, as such a nascent technology, one that is constantly trying to rework itself around regulational confusion or shifting regulation, this ability to tokenize, but then update these tokens and augment them through KYC and AML, all on the native layer, I think is so valuable to Red Swan. And they in fact said that themselves. You combine that with the fixed fees and so on and so forth of Hedera, it really is, it makes so much sense for this narrative, this movement of real world asset tokenization to be done on Hedera. So yeah, very exciting there. That they're also going to be leveraging Circle's USDC, of course, on Hedera payment rails. So we should be getting some more volume there. So exciting news all around.
I think this TradFi space, like Christian said, is certainly going to be important going forward. I think that Red Swan is just the tip of the iceberg. I think there's going to be a lot more coming, but it's a great place to start real estate, start democratizing that space in general, because it is really hard to get into, because it's kind of hard to buy any real estate in small amounts and allow that to be bought by your average everyday investor. All right, so one thing that we can't ignore this week is certainly Karate Combat. I've been talking about it a lot. I do want to give full disclosure that I did degen a little bit in this week, and I bought not an insignificant amount, and I'm actually going to get more involved with the Karate token just because I had a fantastic experience down there at KC39. But I've talked enough about it. Zep, what are your thoughts on what you saw come out of Karate Combat over the past 3 weeks?
Well, I mean, I can just deflect my views and just point to Joe Rogan, because it was obviously such a success that Joe Rogan, i.e. the biggest podcaster in the world, picked it up. That we saw internally for Hedera, we saw lots of accounts, we saw lots of influences on other chains, but I think most significantly, the biggest testament to their success again was that Joe Rogan shout out. And I think this is exciting for various reasons. Of course, Joe Rogan he's had Charles Hoskinson on before, potentially, maybe Vitalik Buterin, talking at the network level. But he explicitly says in this interview that this Web3 decentralized application, i.e. one of the applications, this isn't just the network with a vision. This is something that exists, is out for the retail to use, something that can benefit fighters especially. This application, Karate Combat, is the one that he said this is the first application that's got him excited. And of course, as we know, the iOS app, the up-only gaming, it is all built on Hedera. The Hedera Karate token is the fuel of this ecosystem on the iOS app. And of course, underpinning that is the fuel of HBAR and the Hedera network. So we've had a massive shout out for what is one of our most rapidly accelerating retail applications. And of course, as soon as you check out Karate Combat, what are you going to see? You're going to see Hedera on the floor. You're going to see on the background, the HBAR Foundation, and so on. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like how far they've managed to take themselves, Karate Combat is amazing. They're still very early on. And I'm sure that's only going to get more and more as we go on. Hopefully that'll be a Karate Combat interview with Joe Rogan. And then maybe down the lines, Lehman Baird himself. That would be fantastic.
Well, another thing that came out in that interview that he did with Bas Rutten, who, of course, is one of the commentators of Karate Combat and an MMA legend that signed my glove, by the way. But one of the things that came out of that is that Joe Rogan is planning on going to one of the events. He was talking about the very next event. I don't know if he's going to be able to make that one. That's pretty short notice. That's less than a month away. But I'm pretty confident that he's going to make his way down there. And I'm sure he'll get the application. He'll want to try this out and see what it's like. I think when he gets there to one of these events, he's going to absolutely fall in love with it. And we're going to be hearing him talk about it more if he does go to one of those live events. So I do have a clip from that interview Boss Rutan did with him. I also have some other stuff that I had down there, talked to some people at the event at Karate Combat 39 about the app and about the fights. So listen in.
We have a token, the karate token, it's cryptocurrency. This is another thing. It's up gaming, we call it. You cannot lose. Wait. You cannot lose. You put your tokens on a fighter. If that particular fighter wins, 90% of those tokens go to you. 10% actually goes to the fighter as well. So they try to get a lot of... Oh, it's really cool.
Nice. I like that a lot.
Oh, I love it, you know. And if you lose, you don't lose your tokens. You go, whoa, what's the catch? Okay, Karate Combat, we decided that we, you know, for the first 3 years, we'll take that hit.
Really?
Yeah, so they want people to go, engage, and we don't say anything. Like, Rafael Agaev is the interim champion right now. And he is the interim champion because fighters, the fans, wanted to fight against Raymond Daniel first before he fought Joshua Quayhagen. We listen to the fans. And we do what they want us to do. And that's it. So you with you saying, I want to have ties included, you can petition on the app and you can say, listen, I would like to have ties. And if more people support you, they will allow, there's going to be a new rule that kicks to the ties are going to be illegal.
Get on it, people.
How cool is that,
go.
right?
That's great.
So they listen to the fans, they get 10% of the fighters. And if a lot of people are betting, that could be really good for the fighters as well to get a little bit of extra dough.
I really like the idea of a token that's attached to an organization. That makes me excited about crypto tokens because look at this. Okay, all new Karate Combat app is now live. So this is how it works. So it's a $sign and then karate token, a stash. Every time your fighter wins, climb the so that's a great idea. Yep. It's a great idea also that it goes to the fighters as well, 10%. If the UFC implemented something like that, I think that would be very successful. I think it's a very, very good idea.
I think so too.
Probably one of the most unique ideas that I've heard in a long time, and implementation of crypto token that I think is fantastic.
All right, we are here at Karate Combat, and I'm with Ross. He is the middleweight champion of Karate Combat. Ross, I've gone to a few of these fights. I've watched a fair amount of them online. I think this is the third one I've actually been to live. They are so much fun to watch. It's really engaging for the fans. What's it like to fight for a Karate Combat?
It's amazing. You know, I mean, I've been fighting with the league now for a little over a year and a half, pushing 2 years now. So it's been great. I mean, I've been fighting my whole life. I've been a competitive athlete my whole life. So having the opportunity to be in Karate Combat, which is groundbreaking on so many different levels, you know, just the environment alone, the rule set is really what's taking this to the next level. So it's great to be on the ground floor with a league that's literally exploding all across the world. And then, of course, to be their champion doesn't get better than that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. All right, so now we've just done this airdrop of the karate token. A big part of that is actually going to be governance of the league, whether it comes to, you know, putting some fights together or rule changes, things along those lines. What do you think about fans actually having some input into the league?
Well, listen, you know, fans are what drive the sport. Fans are what drive every sport. And you look across all the Discords, the message boards, Instagram, Facebook, social media, all the fans have input and it falls on deaf ears. And now you see like, okay, we've got the coins. We have the coins are going to be able to make differences in the league when it comes to with Karate Combat, the rules, the matchups, you know, the rankings even I heard. So there's going to be some really cool things coming up and it just gives the power to the fans, which is what they always wanted, right? So now we're here to do our job. The fans get to be involved in their job and we all have a great time doing it.
It's really innovative. I'm just really looking forward to how all this is going to come together. So we're about to start the fights here in a couple hours. Which fights are you most excited about?
Number one, I'm excited for Elijah Everell. I'm a sport karate background guy. I fought all over the world. Elijah Everell is kind of the next man up. You know, when myself and another fighter fighting tonight, Raymond Daniels, left the sport to pursue full contact, Elijah's the guy that took over. He's an absolute stud. So keep your eyes on Elijah Everell from the UK. There's 4 heavyweights that are going tonight. So whenever you see heavyweights in combat sports, you know something crazy is going to happen. And then, of course, the co-main with Raymond Daniels, Sasha Palatnikov is one to keep my eye on because it's around my weight class. And then the main event's going to be an absolute banger. So, yeah, man, top to bottom, card's going to be unbelievable.
Well, Ross, thank you so much for giving us some time. And let's have fun watching these fights.
Yes, sir. KC39, let's go.
All right, now we are here with Delon. Delon is part of the BD team at the HBAR Foundation, and he's been running point on Karate Combat specifically. So what's it been like getting to this point with Karate Combat, actually getting to the token launch, getting to the app launch?
This is a long time coming. Blood, sweat, and tears poured in from the karate side, from the teams at Hedera, from Swirls, from the HBAR Foundation. But we've been big supporters of karates from the get-go, and it's just really exciting to see everything start to blossom now and everyone's hopes and dreams starting to come to fruition.
What do you think the up-only gaming, how will that change the dynamic of watching the fight?
You have skin in the game now. I think the engagement will go through the roof. I think it will help the league become more prominent on social media, which everyone wants, and start to compete with some of the other fight leagues. Everyone knows the names. We all know them. We watch them at home. But all of these different things that we're building, both on the karate side and through their Hashgraph, through Swirls, through HBAR, I think everyone is on the same page about creating certain dynamics that put the fans in the middle of not only the fights, but the organization, which has never been done before.
And finally, what about the app itself? The ease of use, how it looks, all that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts on that?
I am very impressed with what the karate team was able to build, what we've been able to build in conjunction with them and in collaboration. It's really slick. I hope everyone at home has downloaded the app. If you haven't downloaded it, do it now. It's click. You have karate in your wallet. You can place your votes and see if your fighters win. It's fantastic. It's seamless.
And hopefully we're going to get that on our DeFi platforms before long so you can get even more karate tokens and use it for the next event. Delon, thank you so much for swinging by.
Thank you so much. Great being here. See you guys. Download the app.
All right, so I'm here with Josue, and the people in the Hedera community might know you by a different name. What is that?
That's Swizzle.
Swizzle. So he is known by Swizzle on Twitter, and we have been here for a few fights together. How many fights for Karate Combat have you been here for?
I've been to 3 total, 2 in Orlando, 1 in Miami.
All right, so with this fight, there's one thing that's a little bit different. We had the app that was live. Yeah. Did you download the app?
I did download the app, and it's awesome so far.
All right, so did you get the airdrop, all that kind of fun stuff?
I did get the airdrop, and I was able to vote.
So, Josue, why was this event more engaging than the last ones you've been to?
Well, that's a really good question because you have the voting app, right? And when you have the voting app, you're able to look at the app and you're able to look at the people that you actually voted for. So you're really more excited about the fight. And when you're more excited about the fight, you want to know exactly who you voted for and who won. So it's nice to know like the history, the background of the fighters. You just want to know who you voted for and hopefully they won.
So a little bit of skin in the game. It was a blast here at Karate Combat 39, and I hope we can see these guys here again. All right, so now we are here at Afterfight with Delon once again, and I want to know how much more engaging this fight was compared to the last fights.
Well, I had tokens on the fight. I think I was 6 for 10.
And
I was 6 and 4. I did pretty well.
You were right next to the...
Incredible. You guys got to get ringside. You got to come. You have to experience this for yourselves. It is the best fight promotion in the world. It's the pit. It's the pit and the sides and how the fighters are able to use it and spin around. Some are more creative than others. But I think as this league evolves and people develop to fight within the pit, you already see some crazy acrobatics, but you'll see more advanced techniques coming off the walls. It's fantastic. This is the best.
So it was very loud down there at the event, and I had to put a filter on, which messed with the audio a little bit. I still think it was fine to put in there, but people were just so engaged with that app. And there's another team that's building around the Karate Combat IP, and that's Karateka. We've had them on before. Their team has confirmed that they're not even sure if it's Karateka or Karateka. So I think we can say it both ways. But what are your thoughts about what we're seeing come out of Karateka?
It's fantastic to see sort of the network effects, I suppose, of Karate Combat's IP itself now permeating into an application on Hedera, which is going to even further bolster retail engagement in our ecosystem. And, with that comes more active users. That's attractive for developers. That's attractive for games. That's attractive for anyone wanting to build in our ecosystem. I think, first of all, a testament to their team. I think they sold out their pre-sale. They did a fantastic job engaging in the Karate Combat Discord over KC39. They've been in, of course, the Twitch spaces with yourself and the Karate Combat team. They've been talking to our community. They've been highly engaging. I think they understand what they need to do, and I think they've got a good strategy, and they look like they're going to be able to execute that. What is also exciting about this is the first instance of Karate Combat going into a game. Of course, not all of the games that come from the Karate Combat IP will be on Hedera, but this one is. And I think even beyond that, when I just said that, not all of them will be on Hedera, I assume Polygon will see the success of Karate Combat and want to leverage that IP somehow. But the exciting thing, I think, about that IP itself is that no matter what happens, no matter who builds or leverages it, all roads lead back to Karate Combat. And then, of course, all roads lead back to Hedera, whether that's through the iOS app or whether that's just watching the game. So even I think there is a great value actually in other chains picking up this IP with perhaps more liquidity and more users currently, and then those users being exposed to Karate Combat, being exposed to Hedera through them, and so on and so forth. So that in itself I think is great, and this is the first instance of that IP, and yeah, great to see them already selling out that pre-sale, and I'm hopeful for what's to come.
One of the things that I'm noticing about Web3 is it enhances things. If your core product isn't compelling, you're going to have a hard time getting off the ground, regardless of how great your Web3 integration is. But if you have a good product at the core, you can use Web3 to really take it to the next level. And that's exactly what Karate Combat is doing, and that's what Karateka is doing, and so many of the other teams. But you have to have that good product at the core. All right, so the next thing we wanted to get into is one of our refi projects moving into the space. We talked to these guys a couple weeks ago, but they made some announcements this week that we'd like to get into, and that's Aniseed. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Aniseed, we announced that the foundation were migrating their marketplace from Ethereum to Hedera, of course, most notably because of the carbon negative footprint of Hedera, but also because of the fixed fees around NFTs and so on and so forth. And so this migration has now actually been completed. And to celebrate that, I believe they put out their first announcement, which said the first 100 people to follow the Climateers, which is their NFT project, they'll plant a total of 1,000 trees so 10 trees per person. So this in itself is a great commitment to their end goal, which is funding the environment through sustainable NFTs, but also NFTs that are linked to sort of conservation areas and so on and so forth. I know they've got a campaign coming up, I think, over the next couple of weeks or so. So it'll be a good one to follow and definitely highly engaging stuff to come.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. And they have a really innovative way they want to engage with the community. I talked to Duncan, their CEO, about it. So listen to what he had to say. Duncan, we had you on a couple of weeks ago to talk about the Aniseed NFTs. You have some more information you wanted to add on to that about Cedric. Can you tell us about your new character?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are launching a range of characters eventually aimed at increasing awareness and gamifying, supporting biodiversity, but also gaining benefits for the users. So the first character is indeed called Cedric, and he's very simply based on a seed. And his mission effectively is to plant both trees, plants, and other small bushes and so on, with the aim ultimately, of course, of promoting whatever biodiversity benefits those items have. Primarily trees, of course. He is designed to be a fun character, and he is going to be an NFT. He is going to still be on the hash graph, but he is going to be hidden initially in the Search for Cedric campaign around the internet, on websites, on Twitter Spaces, with the aim that you can click on him, collect him. We will plant 100 trees every time he's found, and the finder will get some form of exclusive benefit, and that can be anything from a free NFT, merchandise, a VIP ticket to something, a whitelist spot, and so on. So the finder will get something, the platform will have potentially increased traffic, and we will plant 100 trees every time he's found.
All right, so I do have a couple of additional questions. First, if Cedric is going to be the first character, you're going to have additional characters that do similar things, just in different areas of conservation?
Absolutely. So as an example, the first story of Cedric is set in a garden, and he has to effectively preserve the garden and make sure the ecosystem is balanced. And there will be other characters in that garden, such as Wiggy, who's an earwig, and Beatrice, who's a bee. And they obviously represent pollinators and insects, all of which are obviously crucial within the ecosystem. Initially, obviously, it's only a small garden, but even within that, you have delicate ecosystems around flowers, grasses, seeds, insects, pollinators, and so on. Once that's complete, we will then obviously move on to larger aspects, such as savannas, wetlands, tundras, and so on, with the idea being that people follow Cedric and his stories grow and his impact grows. So that is the idea. But yes, there will be a range of characters post Cedric.
All right, so obviously you have to have partners for this if you're going to have this hidden throughout the internet. And plus you're going to have support, right, to plant these trees. So can you tell us about some of your partners?
Absolutely. So we'd like to bridge both Web 2 and Web 3 with this. So we've made Cedric absolutely easy to claim if you're not Web 3 savvy. So you can go on, you click on him, and he just goes into your account on Aniseed. Of course, if you are, you can transfer him out to your wallet. But our partners, so therefore we are approaching partners in both Web 2 and 3. But within the Hedera ecosystem, which is obviously very sustainable or sustainability focused, we are in discussions with some of the really top projects such as Earthlings, Kabila, Dragma Labs, and so on, to bring in that whole ecosystem so that not only are people promoting their own products, but we're all getting behind as a community this aspect of preservation, conservation. And on the ground, we are working with both, again, Web 2 projects such as Rainforest Trust and Eden Reforestation, but also Web 3 such as the Forest Hero Club, who give you a video and AI around the tree planting. So we've got partners in both Web 2 and 3, but obviously we'd love to work with everyone within the Hedera ecosystem. We can all help drive traffic to each other's platforms. We can use Cedric for good. And we can generate awareness of Hedera and the greater blockchain ecosystem via that.
Well, Duncan, we'll certainly keep an eye out for Cedric and your other characters. Thank you so much for stopping by and explaining it to us.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, it was great hearing from Duncan again. Now, I hadn't gotten the graphic for Cedric yet, but we should be getting it soon. I'll put it up, include it if we did get it. If not, we'll show it here in weeks to come. But we also got some more information out of Blade Wallet. They've been doing things, hitting on all cylinders. Of course, they are working with Karate Combat, powering the back end of their app. But we got some more information about them working with DCent.
So it's great to see Blade here partnering with DCent, which I believe is the leading hardware wallet in South Korea. And of course, the integration here is for network staking through a hardware wallet, which is very significant for any HBARbarian wanting to stake their wallet as securely as possible. But I think, again, this is exciting for multiple reasons. And I think that being that Blade clearly is developing strong inroads in this sort of Asia region. We saw them get their HBAR listing in Japan, which is a very difficult place. They've worked with Slime World in the past, which is, of course, in South Korea. And I think, they're really making inroads in this region. And that's exciting for the network effects for Hedera, considering it's such a vast region and growing region. And they are being accelerated by Web3 at the moment. I think this is great for that. If you want to stake your HBAR, not financial advice, but this collaboration between Blade and DCent is now there.
Hardware wallets certainly add that extra layer of security. So it's good that we have a few hardware wallet options in the Hedera space. The next thing we're going to get into is going back to consensus, but really I want to highlight two things. Twigital, number one, but number two is Generation Affinity. They have done so much good work in the space, just covering things across the board and connecting us with other ecosystems. Now, these two interviews we are about to show are showcasing Twigital, but again, Generation Affinity, every Wednesday, every Monday, they do Twitter Spaces, and they're putting a lot of video content out, and a lot of that is focused on the Hedera ecosystem. So I want to thank those guys for being so engaged, and check out these two interviews.
What is up, everybody? Solomon here. Super excited to be with Genfinity down at Consensus. Equally excited to be here with Brandon, the HBAR Bull, to showcase everything within the Twigital aspect. Brandon, if you could give us just a quick overview about Twigital, that would be fantastic.
Sure, yeah. So Twigital, what it does is it uses photogrammetry. So you'll take anywhere between a few dozen to 100 or 150 pictures of an object, and then our back end will create a 3D object from that you can use throughout Web3. You can use it in AR, you can use it just to display these objects. So we see it as the best way to wrap physical objects for use throughout Web3.
That's fantastic. And I mean, what is the state of the application right now as far as development? When is kind of go live with the mass populace out there?
So we are just testing this out. It is on test flight right now, so it's in beta. We have a bunch of testers out there helping us out, giving us some feedback. But we're getting pretty far in that process. As you've seen, it just kind of works, right? So we're looking at June timeframe to get this in an iOS app store and get people using it.
And as far as the digital twin aspects, with what type of objects work best within Twigital right now, and what are you looking forward to like in the future for maybe things that can't be used right now, but as the technology grows and develops?
Well, that's one thing that we've seen. Like when we first started messing around with photogrammetry apps, it was pretty difficult to do. You'd have to have a nice flat background. You'd have to have a fairly football size object, and you'd want it to have a fairly matte finish. And sometimes it would work, and sometimes it wouldn't. We're to the point now that our back end catches it 99% of the time. But there are things that are more difficult. We'll say like things that are really shiny, that have a really glossy surface, things that are translucent or things along those lines might give you a little bit more trouble. But the way we're seeing this technology of photogrammetry progress, it's only getting better. So even if you can't capture it now, another 6 months down the line, a year down the line, you'll be able to capture it. But we can catch most things.
I think you might have it in your hand, but what is the favorite, what's your favorite item that you've ever Twigitized so far?
I do lean to this one because I can use it as an example. It's from a place that's also building on Hedera. It's Karate Combat. I'm a huge fan of the way they set up their fights, but I went down there and they have some pretty famous commentators. They have George St. Pierre, in my opinion, one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. They have Boss Rutan. So I got them to sign the glove, took some pictures with them. I did an interview myself with them, and then I Twigitized it. We went ahead and created an NFT from one of these. And the nice thing about Hedera is you can have multiple files. So you can have this as the top asset, and then you could have, a picture of George St. Pierre signing the gloves. You can have the interview that I did with him. As time progresses, you could have another picture with George St. Pierre, or you could have a certificate of authenticity, or an appraisal, or something along those lines. So it can follow through on the life cycle of that object, because it is, a lot of times with these items, it's more about the story, right, than the object itself.
What is up, everybody? Solomon, super excited to be down here at Consensus, and especially with the South Austin Music Shop with Genfinity. Obviously, we are interviewing multiple ecosystems. One of the most interesting projects that I've seen recently coming out of the Hedera Hashgraph ecosystem is certainly Twigital. You will see an interview coming out with the HBAR Bull, who is Brandon soon, but you're also going to get a short snippet of all of the value aspects of Twigital from the leading developer within Twigital, which is Jesse. Jesse, can you give us maybe just an overview of your experience in Web3, why you decided to launch Twigital, and tell us a little bit about what Twigital is?
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. Great to always be connected to the community. So I've been a part of the Hedera ecosystem since about 2017, 2018, so a long time. The first few years we were sort of more focused on the community and being a part of everything and making sure that we could stay close to the information. And then at some point, my partner, who is Brandon, the HBAR Bull, who you guys know very well, we sort of made a decision, okay, we're close to this information. This is too exciting not to be developing some type of product. So we've been in ideation for years on what does this look like? And I was in that position. I was super lucky to be able to talk to Lehman Baird, who's the chief scientist and inventor of the Hashgraph algorithm. And we had these conversations on a little show we did called Hedera Forum, which was just a little community show that we would put out at the time. And they were so nice and gracious to offer the time to come on and just chat with us. And I would ask him questions because I was genuinely curious about the possibilities of DLT. And one of the things he always said is, very matter-of-factly, that things of value in the world will be tokenized.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really sure what this could mean or why this is the case, but I always thought about it. And he would tell the story about how it's for the same reason that we moved from paper receipts to computers, because it's just way more convenient. And these things are more interoperable with the devices that we interact with in our lives on a daily basis. So the light bulb went off and I said, well, then, if we're just going to be tokenizing things of value, how can these be represented on Ledger? And up until now, I think for the most part, they've been represented as a hash to some piece of information that exists to verify something. And you could use a tag or some sort of QR code or anything to do this. And I thought, why aren't these objects representing themselves in this autonomous way in which they can act as an agent of revenue or an agent of marketing or whatever they are? Because if you have a beautiful object, and this is one of the reasons I thought this would be a great place to sit down and chat, is they all have a story and the people have a story, and these are the connections. And I think when Web3 has bigger moments, it's because those barriers are broken down and people aren't thinking about finance and Web3 or anything. They're just in their daily lives with the things they love and the people they love. And how can that just be a part of their life? And it's Web3. And do I even know I'm using Web3? What does it matter to me? But so the way we think about it is these objects that are worth tokenizing, and you could have a broad spectrum of ranges on why you'd want to tokenize something, all the way from, just posterity, or maybe it's sentimental, to maybe it has value. Why does it, at the object level, we should be representing these things as themselves? So what Twigital does is create digital twins of physical objects, and those objects are then minted to take the form of an NFT on Hedera, and they can represent themselves that way in any immersive digital environment.
That is probably the most concise and amazing answer to a question that I've gotten in a bunch of different interviews. One of the things that you told me a couple of days ago as well is that though it may be possible to use something like Twigital on other ecosystems, Hedera is kind of that one-stop solution for you guys at the inception, based on how fast it is, scalability, sustainable fees, knowing what the fees are in the consensus service, just based on how the photogrammetry, which is one of the technologies that you guys use through Twigital right now, operates. Can you talk a little bit about that, as far as Hedera kind of just being the perfect fit for what you guys are building?
Yeah, so I think initially my draw to Hedera was honestly Lehman and his ethos and his message, and I just had a feeling that this was something I should pay more attention to. And then when they started rolling out additional services, and I see Patches is still sitting right over here, so what these guys enabled us to do with the further definition of schemas for metadata, it just sort of, it all happened while we were thinking and starting to build Twigital. And then it was like, oh, this is all possible now, this is the most perfect thing. And we never talked to them about it, or it was just a community service sort of that they provided, which allows something like this to just come to be. So Hedera has great features in that they have native services, including a token service. So we generally can avoid any type of security issues that could possibly arise with smart contracts, and we are able to do this all natively. So they also have this amazing thing called the consensus service, in which we can log certain information and get a great timestamp for, and also add like the centralized identifiers. When we can offer things like a verifiable credential. Let's say we have a guitar here and we're at South Austin Music. If I was to buy this guitar right now, they'd hand me a receipt, and I would take that receipt and I'd probably hold on to it because it's kind of important if something were to go wrong. But South Austin Music doesn't get any other value out of selling me the guitar. I'm gone. And the maker of the guitar, in this case that's a Fender, really doesn't get any more value because it just sits on the shelf in my room now. But what if they just issued a receipt as a digital twin of the actual thing in the form of a 3D model? Then this thing is everywhere in every immersive environment. I, as the buyer of it, am excited to show it off in an immersive environment. Fender, as the manufacturer, is probably super excited because this is more marketing, and it just works for everybody. It's super easy. It takes like 2 minutes. We've developed the app. It's a Swift native app that's an iOS app right now. Super easy for anyone to use, takes like 2 minutes. And so, yeah, I think that's why we started on Hedera and how it's been going.
So again, I want to thank Generation Infinity for everything they do in the space. Go check out their YouTube channel and stay engaged with everything they're putting out. With that, we'll go ahead and get into some network analysis. So over the past 24 hours, we have had 83 million transactions, averaging right about 1,000 transactions per second with a max TPS of 2,600. All of that with a time to consensus of well under 5 seconds. And I think the big story over the past couple weeks really has to be account growth. What are your thoughts on the spike we've seen in account growth there, Zep?
We've, of course, seen that massive surge from Crisis Combat with 218,000 accounts in the last week. And I think in the last month, we have 733,000 accounts. I mean, that's a staggering amount. We've got 2,745,000 accounts, and 733,000 of them have been in the last month alone. But excitingly, I've actually heard, having spoken to some people, that not only are these accounts coming from Karate Combat, but they're coming from one of our early stage investments, 1 to 11. The India-based Web3 gaming company that has been working with, I think, with the Indian Professional Cricket League to create a Web3 cricket game. And as I understand, they've come out of stealth. They've got a lot of new users on their accounts, which I think is currently mainly in India. But we're going to have an update in the next coming weeks from that team, from Vignesh. So we'll make sure that we cover that in the coming weeks. But again, not just Karate Combat contributing to these accounts, but another 1 to 11. So very exciting indeed.
Exciting for sure. And with that, we'll go ahead and move down to our fungible token summary. We have Xbox at the top, and I really don't have enough information on that quite yet, but we'll get it in the weeks to come. We see Wrapped HBAR, we have Dovu, Sauce, Hellaswap all in the top 10, and of course our newcomer Karate Combat. And all these numbers you see right here are over the past week. And looking at our NFTs, of course, Ashfall is there at the top. We have our naming service in there as well. Elfview, of course, the cosmetics company, is in the top 10 as well. We have HBAR Pandas and Wizards. Do you have any thoughts on NFTs this week, Zep?
So we had a big launch for Dragma Labs subsidiary called Communify. So Dragma is a team that's been building in Hedera for a long time. They had their Hedera Dragons collection. They've become more of a lab, focusing on things like gaming, NFT infrastructure like marketplaces. And at the very core of this, at the very fundamental level, is what they're calling Communify, which is basically bringing in all of the community projects, all of the community NFT creators, all of the ones that have their own fungible tokens as well, and introducing these fungible tokens into their gaming ecosystem. So as I understand, they're going to have a Rocket is their main character, and they're going to have a racing game. And through this kind of racing game, through this ecosystem, you'll be able to use fungible tokens from all different projects, which is giving them value, which perhaps, or another layer of value, which they didn't have before. And I think this is a real testament, to this kind of interoperability, to this sort of composability thing within DLT, within Web3, the network effects of having a platform, a new marketplace or a game, and being able to introduce all of these other projects into it through their own token. I think that's great. And it gives value to all of these different projects. It gives value to the community, it gives value to the holders, and everyone who's partaking in it. So this is, I think, a really valuable addition to the ecosystem, and I'm excited for them to launch their game. Their website's there, I think their marketplace is there, but they've got games and other things incoming, so definitely one to look out for.
And I also want to mention Karateka again. They had their NFT drop, their playable characters in their game. So these in-game NFT assets, and they sold out with that. So congratulations for that. The other thing we wanted to mention was LG, right? What do they have going on?
So LG were at Freeze New York with a new collection. And there was a bit of confusion here because people were saying, why were they talking about Ethereum? But I think fundamentally here, what needs to be understood is that everything on the LG Art Lab is built on Hedera. Their main layer is Hedera. It's all tokenized on Hedera. Ethereum isn't a layer within that. What they were doing, as I understand, was using Ethereum as a payment service or as an option of payment to bring in that liquidity from other, there's a lot of liquidity in Ethereum. There's a lot of big Ethereum whales. I think the main premise of that was to attract people to be able to spend their Ethereum within the ecosystem, but keep the fundamental layer on Hedera. So they were at Freeze New York, obviously a massive, massive show of our technology, but a massive show again on NFTs. And of course, we know that LG is pursuing patents on this technology now. So it seems that, they're really doubling down on the lab.
Yeah, it's the same thing. They want to tap into the Ethereum ecosystem liquidity. We see that with Karate Combat as well, right? There are karate tokens that are mentioned on Ethereum, and then there's the native HTS tokens. Now, the Ethereum tokens can't be really used with the app. We're talking about different ways that can be done, either by burning the Ethereum tokens and minting new HTS tokens or bridging them over through Hashport. I'm not exactly sure which way they want to go, but because of the inefficiencies that are inherent with Ethereum, they can't use it on their app. So I don't want to say they're useless, but they were used to tap into the Ethereum ecosystem, which is absolutely fine in my opinion, but where the real action happens is all with the HTS tokens. All right. So is there anything else you'd like to pass on as far as NFTs?
I think that's it for NFTs, other than a shout out for HBAR Bonacci, who has come out of he was building a lot behind the scenes, then he launched on Zeus Market, and he's gone from, I think, his mint price was like 200 or 300, 400 HBAR, and he's sailed all the way up to what is now 4,444 HBAR, I believe, which in a declining market, or a market that's been kind of depressed for a while, across all markets, being Ethereum, Polygon, etc. I think that is a massive achievement. And full disclosure, I do own two of these NFTs, but I think just to spotlight the success there is definitely justified.
Yep, I have one as well. I really like what he's doing. It's interesting stuff. But with that, let's go ahead and get into DeFi. I should reiterate that none of this is financial advice, and there are risks to participating in DeFi, including the risk of impermanent loss. Before participating, ensure you understand the risks involved and your local laws and regulations. With that out of the way, we'll start off with DeFi Llama. Not including stater liquid staking, the total value locked is just over $26 million for the Hedera ecosystem. Because of the drop in token prices, Saucer Swap's TVL has dropped about 4% to $17.6 million. Pangolin has dropped 4.5% to about $7 million, and HelloSwap has dropped 5% to $2 million. Regardless of the token gyrations, Saucer Swap appears to be taking market share. Looking at the farming rewards on some of Saucer Swap's popular trading pairs, HBAR X is at 13%, HBAR Sauce is at 28%, and HBAR USDC is at 27%. Then of course we have the newcomer, HBAR Karate, which is at 74%. What's more is that the Karate pair has the second highest volume with relatively low liquidity, which allows additional LP rewards well over 30%. And that's on top of the farming rewards. Granted, as liquidity increases, both the farming and LP rewards will drop. Over on Pangolin, HBAR X is at 17%, HBAR USDC is at 60%, and HBAR PBAR is at 322%. One note is that these are average APRs. I had to make some moves, and when you withdraw, you start over at 0. After nearly 2 days, my returns on HBAR USDC are still around 2%, so not even as good as native staking. I knew it was coming, but it is something to consider on Pangolin. Now let's take a look at the crypto and HBAR markets. Risk assets were flat to down over the past 7 days, with stocks hitting the weekly low around midweek, but have since rallied back as investors expect a debt ceiling deal. Crypto has been a little bit more under pressure, but not horrible. Bitcoin is down 1% on the week and up 1% on the day. HBAR is right in the middle of the crypto pack, being down 3% over the past 7 days and up 1% over the past 24 hours. With HBAR currently sitting between 5.1 and 5.2 cents, just like last week, we still have support at 5 cents and resistance at 5.4 and 5.8 cents. All right, Zeb, that's pretty much all we have. Is there anything else you'd like to pass on to the community?
I think, that early clip with Christian talking about the council, talking about Google, seeing XSGD now on mainnet, another institutional use case, which I'm sure we'll be able to use throughout the ecosystem. We know they're big in Southeast Asia, so maybe they'll work with AidTech or something in the future. You never know, but these kind of infrastructure are composable. They can be used throughout the ecosystem, so that's great to see. On top of that, we saw, Red Swan with the real world asset, real estate tokenization. And so we've seen 3 instances of institutional use cases, institutional development, but we've also seen this takeoff of the retail ecosystem. And this is what the foundation has always been about, is laying these early seeds so that they grow in 1-2 years' time. And we know that there's been a lot of people saying, what is the foundation doing in terms of these investments? We haven't seen that mainnet activity yet. But this is truly a testament to how patience is rewarded in this industry. We've seen an announcement with Karate Combat, which came out, over a year ago. And now we're seeing the use case pick up. We're seeing traction pick up. We're seeing Joe Rogan cover it. We're seeing accounts shoot up on mainnet. We're seeing the network effects of the Karateka and these other influencers. It is all about these early investments. And this, of course, is one of the most, I think, impressionable ones so far to me. But we now also know that 1 to 11 is coming to market in the Indian ecosystem and so on. So I think these early plays that the foundation have made are coming to fruition. And I think that's really exciting to see from a retail perspective. I think once we have a turbocharged institutional ecosystem, even more augmented by a turbocharged retail ecosystem, I think that's just going to be, the world's our oyster at that point. So I'm excited to see all of this coming together. I'm sure there'll only be more in the coming months.
That's the thing, Zeb. These use cases can take years to come to fruition. App.io is a great example of that. Of course, we had Red Swan. That's another one we heard all the way back in 2019, and now that's just coming to market now. We're actually seeing with the HBAR Foundation, things that they've funded come to market faster than some of these other things. Karate Combat is a good example. But the HBAR Foundation has only been actually engaging with these teams for about 18 months. So the fact that we're already starting to get major use cases hitting the network is fantastic. So next week, we're going to have Blade Wallet on. We're going to have Hashwise. You're going to hear some stuff around NASA. So that's going to be a fun one. See you next week.